Mark Henley didn't just disappear. He was erased from the fabric of our reality. At exactly 8:12 p.m., a 911 call originated from a location that, according to every modern map, simply does not exist. This is the Henley incident, a story the government was legally ordered to bury. I am Legend Hunters. Stay alert. Yellowstone National Park is a place of primordial wonder, a sprawling expanse of geothermal fire and ancient pines that has captured the human imagination for centuries. But beneath the surface-level beauty of its bubbling springs and majestic wildlife lies a darker, more visceral history of unexplained disappearances that the authorities would prefer you forget. Mark Henley, a 28-year-old travel vlogger with 1 million followers and an ego to match, was obsessed with finding what he called the unfindable. He didn't care about the iconic Old Faithful or the crowded tourist boardwalks that define the typical Yellowstone experience. He wanted Silent Ridge, a geographically isolated corridor of the park that had been systematically scrubbed from official forestry maps since the late 1970s, for reasons never disclosed to the public. Local indigenous elders and the most veteran park rangers spoke of the ridge with a kind of religious dread, a fear passed down through generations. They claimed the air there was hollow, a dead space where birds would drop dead from the sky if they tried to fly over its canopy, and where even the wind refused to enter its borders. The trees there didn't grow straight. They twisted in agonizing spirals, as if trying to flee from the very soil they were rooted in. Mark viewed these warnings as nothing more than a viral marketing goldmine, a perfect hook for his audience. To him, the Silent Ridge was just a backdrop for his next high-definition adventure, a way to cement his legacy as the world's bravest explorer. At precisely 3:40 p.m., the park's northern gate security camera captured the final image of Mark Henley alive. He looked directly into his camera lens, adjusted the straps of his expensive tactical gear, and gave a confident, mocking smile. "The rangers told me this place eats sound and rewrites the rules of navigation," he joked to his audience, his voice full of youthful arrogance. "Let's see if it can handle a 4K microphone and a military-grade GPS." He laughed, a sound that would soon be forgotten, stepped over the rusted warning barrier, and disappeared into the shadows of the ancient pines. That was the last time Mark Henley was seen in the world as we understand it. By 4:25 p.m., the recovered GoPro footage found weeks later in an impossible location shows Mark entering the deep perimeter of Silent Ridge. For the first 20 minutes, the scenery is breathtakingly beautiful, the sunlight filtering through the needles in golden shafts. But then, at precisely 19:33 inches the footage, the atmosphere undergoes a violent, sickening shift. Mark stops mid-sentence. He doesn't move. He doesn't pan the camera to look for a predator. The silence that fills the recording is not merely the absence of noise. It is a heavy, pressurized, and suffocating vacuum that feels like it's being pumped into the listener's ears. The background noise, the crunch of twigs, the rustle of leaves simply vanishes. You can hear Mark's pulse thudding against the microphone, a rhythmic, panicked drumming that tells the story his voice cannot. The wind has stopped. The birds are gone. The insects are silent. The forest has become a terrifying, still life painting where the laws of nature no longer apply. The air feels thick, almost liquid, as if it's pushing against his lungs, making every breath a struggle. For the first time in his life, the arrogance in Mark's eyes is replaced by a primal, ancestral terror. He realized too late that he wasn't the observer. He was the one being observed by 10,000 invisible eyes, hiding within the ancient, frost-covered pines. Something was watching him from the gaps between the trees, something that didn't belong to the world of light. He was no longer a vlogger. He was prey in a land that time had forgotten. As the afternoon light began to fail, turning the sky into a bruised shade of necrotic violet and slate, six began to collapse around Mark Henley like a house of cards. At 6:17 p.m., he managed to send a final voice message to his sister, Emily, a message that would later be analyzed by acoustic experts for months. The audio was layered with a strange, high-pitched mechanical static that sounded like metal being ground against bone, a sound that shouldn't be possible in the wild. "Emily, I've been walking north for over 2 hours," he says, his breathing coming in jagged, desperate gasps that suggest he's on the verge of a total breakdown. "But I keep passing the same lightning-scarred tree. I marked it with my survival knife, a deep X in the bark. and 5 minutes later, it's right back in front of me. The GPS says I've moved 5 miles, but my eyes tell me I haven't moved an inch. And the sun, Emily, the sun isn't moving. It's been stuck at the exact same angle on the horizon for hours. It's like the day has frozen just to watch me die. This was the Silent Ridge Anomaly in its full, terrifying glory. Mark wasn't just lost in the woods, he was trapped in a temporal loop, a geographic glitch where space-time had become a circular cage. The shadows in the forest were long, obsidian black, and sharp, stretching across the frozen floor like hungry fingers. Yet they remained static, unmoving as the hours passed. The very air began to change, smelling not of pine or earth, but of ozone, metallic sulfur, and old wet fur. A scent that triggered a genetic alarm in the deepest, most animalistic part of Mark's brain. His expensive equipment, the tools he relied on for his survival, began to malfunction in ways that defied engineering. His digital compass spun in impossible, nauseating cycles, and the telemetry on his screen indicated an altitude of 30,000 feet while he was standing on the valley floor. Then, the GoPro footage resumes for one final, harrowing segment. Mark stumbles into a perfect, geometrically precise clearing and finds a structure that defies logic. It's a cabin, built of gray, weathered wood that looks thousands of years old, yet feels surgically clean, devoid of any moss or decay. There are no nails, no hinges, no modern craftsmanship, just gray logs woven together like living bone. The architecture felt wrong to look at, as if it were designed by an intelligence that understood the concept of a house but didn't understand the concept of a home. The door was slightly ajar, revealing a darkness inside that felt deeper and older than the night itself, a void that seemed to pull at Mark's very soul. "There's someone inside," Mark whispers into the camera, tears of pure hysteria streaming down his face as he realizes his isolation is an illusion. "I can hear them, but they aren't talking. They're mimicking." From the impenetrable darkness inside the cabin, a voice called out. It was Emily's voice. It was his sister's voice, clear, sweet, and comforting, saying, "Mark, come inside. It's cold out there. I've been waiting for you." But Mark knew the truth. Emily was 3 states away in Chicago. Whatever was inside that cabin wasn't his sister. It was an apex predator that didn't just hunt flesh, it hunted memories and exploited the human heart. As he turned to run, the ground beneath him seemed to vibrate with a cold, rhythmic energy, and the trees began to lean inward, as if the forest itself were a living machine closing its jaws around its latest specimen. At 8:12 p.m., the 911 Dispatch Center finally received the call that would haunt the state of Wyoming and the federal government forever. The operator, a 20-year veteran named Sarah, would later testify that the line felt unnaturally cold, a physical sensation of dread that traveled through the headset and into her very bones. The transcript of that call, which remains a classified federal document to this day, is a descent into existential horror. Operator 911, what is your emergency? Mark, his voice is thin, accompanied by the sound of rhythmic, heavy thudding. "I'm at the cabin. It followed me. It's wearing my voice now, Sarah." Operator, "Sir, I need you to stay calm. We are trying to ping your satellite phone." Mark, "The map is a lie. Everything is a lie. This isn't a forest. It's a calculated trap. I can see the stars now, Sarah, but they aren't the stars we know. They're blinking. They're moving in patterns. They're looking at me like eyes in the dark." Operator, "Sir, your GPS is showing a location in the center of Yellowstone Lake, but you're describing a forest." Mark, a sound of heavy wooden logs splintering erupts in the background. "It's at the door. It's not Emily anymore. Oh God, it's me. It's looking at me with my own face. But the eyes are just empty voids of static. It's reaching out. It wants its face back." The next 12 seconds of the recording are the reason the Henley incident is marked as a red file. A sound erupts that can only be described as a mixture of a human soul screaming and the sound of a supercomputer's hard drive being crushed by a hydraulic press. It is a digital, screeching roar that caused Sarah's ears to bleed. Through the overwhelming static, a second voice can be heard, Mark's voice, but it sounds hollow, mechanical, and resonant. It says, Specimen 4 to 11 successfully integrated, resetting the ridge parameters. Then, the line went into a zone of silence, a vacuum of sound, where even the static disappeared. A massive, multi-agency search and rescue operation was launched at dawn. They found Mark's vehicle at the trailhead. They found his expensive GoPro lying in the center of a perfectly circular clearing of dead, gray grass, a spot where no cabin had ever stood, and where no footprints led in or out. The camera's aerospace-grade metal casing was untouched, but the internal SSD had been physically melted into a slag of silicon. Yet there were no signs of heat damage or fire. It was as if a concentrated pulse of electromagnetic energy had targeted the data specifically. 3 weeks after the case was officially suspended, Emily received a final text message from Mark's encrypted number. It was a high-resolution photo of the Silent Ridge Trail. In the center of the path stood a figure, blurred and distorted, as if seen through shimmering heat. It was wearing Mark's clothes, holding his secondary camera, and waving with a stiff, mechanical gesture. The caption read, "The loop is closed. I am finally home. Do not come looking. The ridge is hungry again." Mark Henley was never found, but his voice is still out there, looping in the static of the wilderness. Stay on the marked trails, never trust the silence, and for your own sake, and never answer when the woods call your name. This is Legend Hunters. Sleep with the lights on.